But the Chiefs, man, opening this season, I talked about how special that night is when they lowered the banner. When I left New England, I was a little bit bummed because, not because of the decision. I had to make the decision I had to make, but I was gonna miss that opening game, right? Where everything we did last year, we get to get cheered on the football field. Because usually when you're all together and you're doing the parade or you're doing whatever it is post Super Bowl, you're all fucked up. You're drunk, you're partying, that stuff's awesome. But to feel it in that kind of setting when you have that mindset on, it's very intense, and I'll never forget that night. The Chiefs are used to it, right? They're rolling out there. They're seasoned vets at this thing. They've had to defend Super Bowl titles, but they've never had to do this. And, it's been since 2014 Travis Kelce has missed the game. And I know that there's a chance he plays, according to Andy Reid, but he's not going to play. If I'm Andy Reid, if you actually had to figure out whether his ACL was gone, then I would rest him because you got a full 10 days from Thursday to Jacksonville. And Jacksonville is an AFC playoff opponent. The Lions, if you are who you say you are, you should be able to play them competitively, even without two of your big three. And I think the Lions are a good football team, but and I bet the Lions. I bet the Lions as soon as I heard the Travis Kelce news, I bought the 7. Reminder, buying points is okay. When it comes to Travis Kelce, that's not your biggest concern. Your biggest concern is Chris Jones for obvious reasons. We've talked about that at length, but it does complicate things on offense for you. And for Patrick Mahomes, who's never seen a game in the regular season without Travis Kelce, this is uncharted territory. Rashee Rice is a guy that's going to have to step up a little bit. I thought he was going to be like more of a package guy, but he's going to have to play a lot early. Good thing they kept 7 wide receivers. I think they're playing the numbers game a little bit, trying to figure out who's going to shake out over this first month of the season. Rashee Rice is a guy who's got to. You've got MVS, you've got Kadarius Toney, who's your number 1, and that makes things a little bit tougher on him, right? Because he's supposed to get singled all the time because of Travis Kelce. Well, if he starts going off Thursday night, although Sutton and Jerry Jacobs are 2 guys who don't really travel much with the number 1 or that sort of thing, they kind of stay home. You can do more things to bracket Kadarius Toney and send some reinforcements at him if he does get loose. So it becomes harder on him. Rashee Rice has to step up. Sky Moore, a lot of pressure on him this year, obviously. And then, I heard Veach talking about Fortson being their jump ball guy in the past. They've got Justin Ross, who I think, you should probably keep your eye on. Brett Veach was talking about this kid like he's going to get some jump balls. And this was before the injury. So I think at the red zone, you might look at him to step up. And another thing about Rashee Rice is he's a good blocker. So you might see him reduced a little bit, not in line necessarily, but a guy who can get in a bunch and put a hat on somebody on the second level. I think the big thing that you have going for you is Mahomes has played a lot in the preseason. Yeah. And it's not like Mahomes needs to, but look around the league. Jalen Hurts is going to go up to New England, hasn't played in the preseason. A bunch of guys we talked about on this show have not played in the preseason, which is kind of a new trend. I feel like quarterbacks getting the rust off is a thing that you have to do. But teams are rolling the dice. Mahomes has played in the preseason. He's ready to roll. And it's really critical you get off to a fast start against these guys because you don't want the Lions to settle into like a perpetual 4-minute mode. You want them to chase you. And I think the key is if you're Steve Spagnuolo, you're going to dial it up. Yeah. Steve's going to dial it up. Spags is going to dial it up. And he's going to dial it up on rundowns. So they got to keep the big plays from happening. Sometimes you get aggressive on rundowns. You're one crease off, and it's a 40 to 50-yard gain out of the backfield. So I think he's going to heat him up. If I'm Spags, I'm going to say, hey, let's make Jared Goff beat us. I feel like I like our matchups outside. McDuffie, Snead. I think those guys can man up just fine. I think the big question mark is going to be, can you stop the run? And we've harped on this thing. So
looking at the other side, you think Detroit will bring more pressure without Kelce? And, how does it change the few days before when you're game planning with uncertainty about a star player playing or not?
I think it's usually pretty uncertain, but I do think in this situation he's not going to play. If this was a thing where they were going to, a little gamesmanship, Dick with the Lions, he'd have a hamstring 3 days ago. Yeah. I mean, obviously the guy really hurt his knee. They're not making this up. But it doesn't feel like an injury 2 days out that I feel good about, especially if you weigh the risk reward. I mean, they got off to a slow start last year, right? They can afford to do this. Yeah. But what you can't afford to do is have Travis Kelce's knee getting Swiss cheesed in the first month of the season. So I think the big thing for Detroit is, you simplified things on the back end last year. You added Brian Branch. You've got some good pieces back in the secondary. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I think, is going to play. Kind of took me by surprise. But you have the pieces in the secondary. You might play a little bit more man. And another thing is when you're in zone and it's scramble drill, who's the guy that gets free? And those back-breaking conversions. So it's going to be up to the rushers to rush, right? They're not playing at home. There's not going to be a silent count type thing. You got to rush smart, and you got to rush as a unit. And if they're manned up behind you, you got to be really smart. We talked about the Mahomes play that broke the Eagles back in the Super Bowl. They rushed 5. It's first and second down. I think it's second down or first down, and they rushed 5. They're manned up outside. You've got 2 linebackers that can pull it out in the flat. They're chipping out on one side. They're in the flat on the other side. And so the middle of the field just opens up. So when you're in man, it's dangerous. Even if you're rushing 5 and you got a balance up guy, which they had, they got to be careful when they get in man, but they can play more man. And you can do more and take guys away that would be doubling and paying more attention to Travis Kelce to do other things. So I think for the Lions, this is a big lift, right, offensively, facing that Chiefs offense rather. And on the other side of things, obviously, not just the run game, but you're replacing half of your sack production from last year. Okay? Like, even the reinforcements you brought in, Omena, who's not playing for 6 games, Dunlap, gone. Frank Clark, gone. Chris Jones, God, it feels like he's gone. Some Chiefs fans will tell me that he's gone. I got a guy today that said, well, your social's not going to change the Chiefs offer. I'm like, well, that's your fucking loss, not me. I mean, I'm not the one who has a chance to win a Super Bowl this year. If you want to plant your flag on this thing and piss in the wind, be my guest. It's not going to end well for you. So it's a little preview of maybe what they're going to have to deal with in the near future. And I don't mean, they're not going to replace these guys with pieces, but Travis Kelce, we talked about him being underpaid. You're going to have to pay him again. He's 32 years old,
34,
something like 34. He's not going to play forever. Chris Jones is certainly not going to be there forever. It doesn't feel like he's going to be there for a month, depending on what day I wake up. So this is going to be a big test for Kansas City. And don't you feel like they figure out how to win this game?
Yes.
I mean, they're still favored by 5, yeah.
The line moved to 5 or 5.5. I got it at 7, right? I bought 7. I feel good about Detroit covering. I think it's going to be a good ball game. But I could also see Kansas City saying, fuck it, we're going to run a lot of gap scheme shit. We like our other tight ends just fine. Blake Bell can block. Noah Gray's going to catch the ball. We're going to get creative, and we're going to possess the football. And for the Lions, you can play keep away. That's got to be the goal. You got to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field, and you can do that with this run game. But it's a tough road test. You talk about Jared Goff, the pressure's on him. If I'm walking in this game and I'm Patrick Mahomes, I'm like, fuck it. I get a chance to prove that I can do it with nobody else. Yep. That's the kind of competitor he is. And those are the mind games you play with yourself. Even though damn well you wouldn't rather have it, you'd rather have it the other way. But for Jared Goff, if you can't go into Kansas City and play a good, clean game and keep this thing competitive, no rushers on their team that scare you, and Chris Jones is out, and Travis Kelce's out offensively, the Lions are going to have a lot to talk about when they get back to Detroit if they don't show out in this game.
It's a hell of a rematch to live up to, right? Because one of the last times Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes faced off, it
54-51.
Yep.
Oh, right.
The McDonald's game. Shout out to Ocho Cinco, who loves McDonald's. The guy eats McDonald's nonstop. I'm looking forward to this game just because the season's starting. I mean, that Sunday slate is looking like a snack right now.
And if the Lions steal when they have the Seahawks at home in week 2, I mean, that's a big jump to their NFC North hopes.
That's a big one.
With extended rest, too. It's an advantage to start on a Thursday.
No question. And the Chiefs need to use that advantage. Not that if it was Sunday, you wouldn't have any – it's not but like it just doesn't make sense. If this game was Sunday, maybe, depending on where Kelce is, you play him. But it's two days from now, man. And the worst thing with knee injuries, you don't even know how bad it's going to be until you wake up the next day. So we're talking about this. Travis Kelce can wake up tomorrow and not be able to walk, because the swelling, shows up. And it's going to be a process to get him back. The run after the catch stuff, That's it. Who's going to step up and break tackles for them? Because, he's their guy. He's the guy. It's a nightmare that he catches the ball for a 13-yard gain on 3rd and long. But the bigger nightmare is he runs for another 14 yards. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be the key. Who's going to give them the run after catch ability? I think it's Kadarius Toney.
My early viewing party is going to be Kyle watching the Chiefs and waiting for those special plays that Andy's going to inevitably draw up. And it's going to be the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood gif. Every time in Kyle, it's going to be that gif next to Kyle. Every time he's going to be pointing out the carousel, he's going to be pointing out these things.
I don't know who was more excited to hear that Andy Reid took a play from a janitor, me or Kyle. Kyle loves Andy Reid. Who doesn't love Andy Reid? This is going to be a heck of a test. Great coaches. Mike Vrabel went to Kansas City last year with Malik Willis and a bunch of guys I hadn't heard of, and they went toe-to-toe with Kansas City. So if I'm Kansas City, I'm probably showing that tape and saying, we don't have to be at fucking full strength. Team came in here, almost beat us last year with Malik Willis at quarterback. And the same thing for the Lions. You can go in this place and beat these guys. So it's an interesting position for both teams to be in.